Reframing Mindset podcast, where I clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity, practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, welcome back to Reframe Mindset podcast. And it's kind of simple. So it is, let's say, I guess, in the fourth year episode, and 4 year experience episode, and stuff like that. Don't you realize it? So, boom, if you like me and all this, so come in and be like, oh my god, I want to get rich. All this stuff. I hear all these stories of how I'm actually reach somewhere, and then see me go back down and reach somewhere again. So, I'm right now in the, what I consider the fourth year of home ownership and stuff like that. The actor was listening to me, I was listening to me actually going out and cutting a yard, and he mentioned something like a machete. He hear me one part in the podcast, he hear me mention something about using a machete. And what happens that this relates to the episode where I mentioned something that everything is have a shelf life, and why and what do I mean by that? And the shelf life varies. Something of years and stuff like that. So what do I mean by that? The machete, if you actually realize when I actually mentioned it, it was like in the first couple years I was always cleaning the backyard. And what I actually realized was that when I actually bought the machete, it was actually very new. So that's the thing, where you grow up in a, so for example, you grow up in your grandmother's house or your mother's house or something like that. You're born and you see every one of the tools that she has bought, or the whole family has bought, and you actually born and see those stuff. And what you think is that you actually start this stuff for free. That's the thing where you actually born in a house or stuff like that. You realize I grew up in a house or stuff like that. You actually see everything in the home, and you actually feel like these stuff are free, or these stuff was always how it was. This stuff was always how it was. When you actually start grow up and you actually go out and start able to, that's, and some of the things and that's the thing about when you grow up in a home. Some of the things that most of the things that actually see in the home, you when you're very young, you can't even afford to even buy it or even consider to buy it. So you just have the perception that that is your reality. So if you what is your that is your reality. Whatever home you grew up in, that is your reality. So if you grow up that is your reality. So this is to say, if you grow up in a family and you see a machete and it's old, or something, our farm tools are we're called house tools. You see house tools or stuff like that. Anything in the house or stuff like that, and it's that way. It has it had a shelf life in the sense that it was actually new one point, and due to either carelessness by the user, like maybe I actually kind of the way I stored it make it actually um go got bad real quick, or due to the fact that it was actually old, like it's been there for years or stuff like that. It it actually when you actually see it in the home, it's not how it was actually bought or stuff like that. So those are stuff where everything like things can depreciate and appreciate or stuff like that. But this actually right now looking at the machete and see, it's kind of get rusty and stuff like that. When I actually bought it, what I actually realized was that at one point this machete was actually new, very new, and now it's actually very old, like it might be somewhat counterproductive to actually maybe use it now, but you never know. I haven't used it as yet, but you never know. It might actually be very counterproductive to actually use and stuff like that. But that's the thing where it be like sometimes you actually have to go out and do these stuff. That's really personal episode. Sometimes you actually have to go out and do these stuff yourself to see that when you actually see the what happens after. Now you kind of understand. So okay, yeah. Now we actually understand. So, yeah, these stuff are old. These stuff these stuff wasn't old forever. You did the born. you didn't born 90 or stuff like that. You when you're born, you didn't born and come in and see me stuff like that. Couple hours here or stuff like that before someone else here before me and stuff like that. So you come in and you see everything this way. And it's like, oh, it was always this way. No, at one point it was new. Maybe you actually do something and actually got newer. Sometimes you actually go up in that every item you actually go and see maybe it's either new, older or stuff like that. But you actually will not know until you actually get the go out and get the product yourself and you actually get it, actually use it, and then what will happen is that you actually see it get you. What will happen is that what happened to what you see when you actually grow up, when you actually grow up and buy it, you actually see what happens to it. So you go see, oh, actually see get all that stuff like that. Be like, what happened? You maybe put it out in the rain and stuff like that, rain season, all these stuff. All these things happen, and what happens that you actually see that now. Now, what happens when you actually have to go out now and actively say, okay, no, and this is the difference. These are stuff where be like, oh, these are stuff that actually keep shelf life and stuff like that. They'll be like, oh, these things are a mistake or stuff like that. That's the thing about growing. We can be like, oh, we can overlook these stuff, bro. Say, okay, yeah, we actually do this and find out that okay, the machete is getting old and stuff like that. Maybe for some reason, maybe it's due to nature. It actually get old, and that's the thing where we actually talk about 40 of ownership compared to 98 year and all these stuff. These stuff, the answer I might actually get the true answer of what happened to it maybe in like the fifth or sixth year of the whole ownership. And be like, okay, now I know that I just come in and always see me with a perfect machete or stuff like that. I'd be like, what the hell? And then, and then that thing where I'd be like, oh, I go, you can always see me with a perfect machete and be like, wow. And stuff like that. And like, what happened? It's like, oh, the lesson that I actually found I was in the year and I actually bought the first one and stuff like that. They got come in always see me with a perfect one. And like, what happened? So, what happens is that you, in the 6 years of like that, you understand why that tool got old and then you never get old. And that's the same thing with everything else with the in like for example the 90th year computer 40 or stuff like that. It'll be like, oh, just always go and see they come and replace. Come on everything in the home has a use. Everything in the home have a use. Everything in the home have a shelf life and stuff like that. And the thing to actually realize is that to come out after the poverty or stuff like that, mindset or stuff like that, you actually have to actively say, okay, these stuff have a shelf life and understand what the shelf life is. Like boom. So all the episodes you're gonna see come out now, you're gonna actually realize that okay, you just have to actively do these stuff. And it's going to hurt. It's going to no, it's not going to hurt. You're going to become rich. And this is the thing we're actually going to see. You're going to feel yourself out there to becoming richer, bro. And it's going to feel so fun. 'Cause that's the thing. Like, you're going to hear me out there. You hear me out there. So you hear me use machete. This episode was now. You hear me out there. So I said that the machete get old. Or the machete got old. Next thing you know, maybe in the future you hear me that I don't even use the machete. I'm not even using machete at all. You hear me use the walker or something else. You hear me using something else or stuff like that. You don't know. You don't know what you can. What you have learned so far is that the thing can get old. The machete was new once and it actually get old. And it actually got old. So now you know that no, but no. The next thing is actually know why it got old. When it gets old and stuff like that, you know that. Then when you actually know that for that tool, then you do that for every single tool. Like every single tool in the home has a shelf life, but not only that, it can if you actually learn about it and stuff like that, and learn to maintain it and all this stuff. It will last as long as it should be then not only last as long as it should be, when you're actually able to get a better one, you can actually pass it down and all these. You can actually do those stuff while it actually have use, while it actually has use, and then boom, this lesson that I actually learned buying the machete, you just pass it on and stuff like that. Like, oh, I got a new one now. I don't even need this old one. And it's like, oh, the old stuff, and they learn all the lessons from using the old things until you actually get your own one as well and stuff like that. And sometimes be like the old one has enough lessons to teach you everything you need, teach someone else everything you need until you get a new one and stuff like that. A new one teach you everything you need until you get a better one and all these stuff like that. Those are stuff that be like, yeah. So this is the lesson with the machete. I can use that with every single thing in the house. You know, every single thing in the house. It'll be like, oh, every single thing in the house when you're born and actually see it was once new, and it either and because of this episode, it will either get newer or better or worse. Or worse. But only you, me experience it, and you who listening to it and actually apply it will actually know what how it was when because you actually purchased it. So because you purchased it and stuff like that, you actually know when it gets old. You know how it feels when it gets old and stuff like that, and when it's supposed to actually go away and all these things. When it should actually go, when it go away, but not when that you actually know when you see the better option. You're gonna be like, okay, instead of buying this, you know when you actually see the better option. You're like, okay, now you actually see the better option. But this is the simple thing with a machete you see, and that's gonna relate to everything in the home. Where be like, okay, boom, everything you see in the home, it wasn't that always that way. It was once new. I was once fresh. Even every design and stuff like that was once fresh and new and stuff like that. Then either over time or stuff like that, it got old or stuff like that, and you have to actually either. And it was due to just like everything else. The novice of the use was due to the novice of the user, person using it for the first time to really understand it and stuff like that. So you actually get all the experiences that come with a novice using it. But that doesn't mean you should not use it. It just means that okay, it's a novice using it. So now you actually have to when you actually learn it thing now, I know that okay, you actually do that because of rust and those stuff get fixed and all these stuff. Now we actually go back. You'll be like, that's where experience comes in and be like, okay, how the hell your machete just always new and actually get the thing or you just always have the right why it's like, oh you mentioned machete one time, you oh I didn't never see with that. And it's like, oh in this lesson with the machete and stuff like that, boom bang quick I use it to actually gain some income to buy something better. And then boom, not only that, the machete teach me all the lessons I actually need. I don't even need the machete anymore. And it's like, oh, I don't need the machete anymore. It's like it will be actually be um, anti-progress to actually keep it, and that's what you're going to actually see and be like, okay. Some of the time, like these are so these few episodes that you hear coming out now from like in the May 2025 episodes and stuff like that, you're gonna actually realize that some of the stuff I'm always telling you is actually sometimes I'm contemplating actually doing it. And it's like cool. But what happens that I think about the progress where it be like I'm always contemplating doing it, but what happens that the worst of it is actually gone. I didn't realize where that the worst of it is actually gone. And I actually attempt it is going to be somewhat 10 times easier than how I think about it in my head. It's going to be because what the worst of it is actually gone. The prepare you actually was preparing. That's the thing where be like, oh, we actually was actually preparing for it. So what will happen is that boom, in there you're gonna hear me or whatever and you're coming out with this and that, this and that happened. And it's like, oh, there this stuff happens so easy. Yeah, we're actually preparing for it. certain time. And it's actually hard to do it. We're actually going and do it, and we're like, all the tools are there. So these are basically all these stuff are basic lessons to say you're going to use. This is stuff to actually use every single thing in the home or stuff like where you grew up in and stuff like to say, okay, when you actually go out and buy your first or good amount of house items, you know that these items were gonna be there for a long time. Are going to be there for as long as you actually require it. You're gonna actually be there for how long it's required to be there or less. You're gonna be like, oh, you're gonna be used and stuff like that. And this is the important lesson you're gonna go to into it with in boom into what 29 or stuff like that, 30 years stuff like that. You're gonna realize that okay, every single thing in the house has value and has a shelf life. You have to go through, use every single thing, and it's like, okay, you're gonna know when it gets old and stuff like that, and you're going to go through, and then eventually every single thing gonna get used, and that goes for everything, like every single thing in the home, from the small to the big. I'm talking about the dress and every single thing. And then actually go everything our shelf life, even the roof. Yeah. After listen to episodes stuff like that, hear about hurricane and stuff like that, the roof and everything our shelf life. And what will happen is that when you actually know those shelf life and stuff like that, you know when you actually put it up, you're never gonna face that problem again. It's gonna be like, oh, you know that yeah, this actually was that. This actually didn't last this hurricane and stuff like that. This actually didn't last this stuff like that. And it's like, oh, and then it will never happen again. You actually be proactively solving that problem. It's like you'll be like, oh my god, this house just never go through that problem. It's like, oh, I will actively out there. So even in our lazy days, so like we're actually out there. So actively saying, yeah, you're out there. So I check and see. We're out. We always in mentally say, okay, we're in the house mode. No, yes, in the house. We're in the house ownership mode or stuff like that. We'll be like, oh, yeah, rain season now. You might be a hurricane or stuff like that. You never know house leaking or stuff like that. Things have a shelf life or stuff like that. And what happens that that's the reason we talk about perspective of experience. We talk about this is my fourth year in this home, but another home is like been there for like years, 90 years or stuff like that, years and stuff like that. So I feel that these lessons relates to me now, but another person will be like, oh, 90 years or stuff like that. Have enough like in the bank to actually do a check on my house really quick and just boom bang quick, and then they just do that check, boom, throw out every single thing, boom bang quick, that house lasts longer, and then that done. Record one man trash, another man trash, all these stuff just come in and just use again to actually build up another house that is in its earlier life cycle and stuff like that. And stuff like that. Those and those stuff will actually just So that's the basic lesson for this episode. Thank you for listening and for our next episode.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page Reframing Mindset Podcast or on Twitter at ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.